I thought the worst thing about running into my ex would be the awkward silence. Turns out, the worst thing is realizing he's been following me for weeks close enough to touch, yet invisible until tonight. I froze the moment I caught him across the street, leaning against a lamppost as if he belonged there, like the shadows had been waiting with him. His hair was shorter than I remembered, his jaw sharper, and that same damn leather jacket still hugged his frame like it had back when he used to wrap his arms around me. But it wasn't nostalgia that made my throat tighten. It was the fact that he was watching me with the kind of vigilance people usually reserve for guarding something precious or someone in danger. "Ethan," I said, my voice cracking. The name was a wound that never quite healed, and speaking it now felt like salt pressed into it. He didn't move, didn't smile, didn't offer me even the courtesy of pretending this was chance. Instead, he pushed off the lamppost, his boots heavy on the cracked sidewalk. "You shouldn't be walking here alone, Noah," he said, low and steady, as though he still had the right to tell me what to do. A part of me wanted to scream at him to demand why the hell he thought shadowing me for God knows how long was okay. Another part of me, the quieter one, remembered nights when his voice was the last thing I heard before falling asleep, when his words meant safety, not intrusion. But the city had a way of swallowing innocence whole. And if Ethan was here, hovering on the edges of my life again, it meant something darker than heartbreak was coming for me. The first time I noticed something was wrong had been last week. A black car idling outside my apartment, the same one parked again 2 blocks away when I grabbed coffee the next morning. The way footsteps echoed mine at night, too perfectly in rhythm, as though the sidewalk itself had grown a shadow. I brushed it off, told myself I was being paranoid, told myself I was just lonely enough to invent drama. But Ethan's eyes now told me I wasn't paranoid. His eyes had always been impossible to hide from. They could strip me bare with one look. "What do you want?" I demanded, wrapping my jacket tighter, as if fabric could shield me from the storm I felt rising between us. "To keep you alive," he said simply. I laughed, came out harsh, bitter, broken. "You left me. You don't get to come back and play hero now." His jaw tightened, and for a moment I thought he might reach for me. Instead, he stopped a foot away, close enough that I could smell the faint smoke of his cologne, the one that used to cling to my pillow. "You don't know who you've gotten tangled up with, Noah," he murmured. "And if you keep walking blind, you won't live to see the end of it." The words were a punch I hadn't braced for. I wanted to tell him he was crazy, that I was just a 23-year-old grad student juggling shifts at a bookstore, not some pawn in whatever underworld drama he was hinting at. But deep down, I knew. I knew from the men who lingered too long in the cafe I worked at, from the uneasy feeling in my gut that never quite let me breathe easy anymore. "What did you do?" I asked finally, my voice trembling despite my best effort to sound strong. "What mess did you drag me into this time?" His silence was louder than any confession. 2 years ago, Ethan and I had burned too brightly to last. We loved like we were invincible, like no one could touch us. But beneath it all, he carried secrets he never shared, scars that no amount of love could soften. And when he left without explanation, I told myself I hated him. That hatred was easier than admitting I still loved him. Now, standing here on this cracked street with shadows pressing in, I realized the truth was more complicated. Because no one followed you this closely unless you mattered. And no one risked their own life to protect yours unless the love had never really ended. "Tell me the truth," I whispered, the air thick between us. "Why are you really here?" He met my eyes then, raw and unflinching. "Because they know you're the only person I ever cared about enough to destroy everything for. And they'll use you to get to me." The ground felt like it tilted beneath me. 1,000 questions clawed up my throat, but only one made it out. "And what happens if I don't want your protection?" His lips pressed into a line, his gaze cutting through me with the kind of pain only love could sharpen. "Then you'll die, Noah," he said, "and I'll never forgive myself." The night didn't end there. It was only the beginning, the first unraveling thread of a life I thought was ordinary, pulled loose by the very man I once trusted most. I should have walked away. I should have told him to stay out of my life for good. But when headlights suddenly flared at the end of the street, and a black SUV slowed just a little too deliberately. I felt his hand brush mine, urgent and grounding. And for the first time in years, I didn't pull away. That night, Ethan led me through alleys I'd never noticed, his grip on my wrist both protective and possessive. He didn't explain much, just muttered warnings and checked every corner like danger lived in the walls. My chest burned with questions, with the ache of old love stitched unevenly against new fear. Somewhere between the darkened blocks and the safety of his apartment, I realized the truth I hadn't dared speak. I wasn't just afraid of what hunted me. I was afraid of the way I still wanted him, even now, even after everything. And that want was its own kind of danger. Ethan's apartment was nothing like I remembered. The last time I had stepped inside a space he called home, it had been filled with life-half-read books stacked on the nightstand, the scent of fresh coffee lingering in the air, the careless mess of a man too busy loving and being loved to keep things orderly. This place was the opposite. Sparse, cold, meticulous, as if every object had been weighed and judged for its necessity. No color, no warmth, just steel, dark wood, and silence. "Sit," he said, nodding toward the worn leather couch. I didn't. Instead, I stood with my back pressed against the door, arms crossed. "You've got 5 minutes. Start talking." He exhaled, running a hand over his jaw. The light above caught the scar that hadn't been there before, a thin line just under his cheekbone. A reminder of battles I'd never seen, of nights I hadn't been there to stitch him back together. "You're being watched," he said simply. My laugh was sharp, almost hysterical. "Yeah, by you. That much I figured." His gaze hardened. "Not just me. Them." "Them?" I repeated, my stomach tightening. He paced, his movements restless, coiled energy barely contained. "There's a group that doesn't like people crossing lines. They deal in things you don't even want to imagine, Noah. Drugs, weapons, people. I walked away from that world when I walked away from you. But walking away doesn't mean they stop seeing you as leverage. You mattered to me. That's enough for them to come after you." For a moment, I couldn't breathe. The words felt like smoke filling my lungs. "So what? You're telling me I've got the mob after me because I wouldn't dated you?" His eyes met mine, unwavering. "Because you're the only thing they know could break me." The silence that followed was unbearable. My heartbeat was thunder in my ears. I wanted to scream at him, to accuse him of lying, of dramatizing the situation just to force himself back into my life. But deep down, I knew Ethan wasn't capable of that kind of manipulation. His truths were always sharper than his lies. "Why didn't you warn me sooner?" My voice cracked despite my attempt at control. "Because I thought I could keep them away. I thought staying in the shadows was enough." He took a step closer, his voice softer now. "But they're moving in, Noah. That SUV tonight? That was them testing boundaries. You can't go back to your apartment. Not now." I shook my head, backing against the door. "No. I can't just leave my life behind because you show up out of nowhere with some half-baked story about criminals. I have a job. I have classes." He closed the distance between us in 2 strides. His hands braced on the door near my shoulders. His face was inches from mine, his breath warm, his eyes desperate. "You have me," he whispered. It was too much, the nearness, the memory of what we'd been, the danger pressing down on us. My chest ached with the collision of fear and longing. "Ethan," I warned, though I wasn't sure what I was warning him against. He searched my face, and for a heartbeat, the world shrank down to just us, just the gravity that had always pulled us together despite everything. His gaze dropped to my lips, and my pulse spiked, old memories roaring back like wildfire. But then he stepped back, as though pulling himself from the edge of something neither of us were ready to face. "You'll stay here tonight," he said, voice clipped now, as though emotion had no place in the conversation. "It's safer." I swallowed hard, forcing my thoughts into order. "And tomorrow?" His expression darkened. "Tomorrow we figure out how to end this." The couch was uncomfortable, but it wasn't the springs digging into my back that kept me awake. It was him, Ethan, pacing in the next room, his silhouette occasionally cutting across the faint glow from the streetlights outside. I turned over, staring at the ceiling, replaying every moment of the night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the SUV, the slow roll of tinted windows, the weight of unseen eyes watching me. But worse than that was the echo of Ethan's voice, low and raw. "You have me." I hated how much those words still mattered. By morning, exhaustion won. I must have dozed off because I woke to the smell of coffee. "You really think I'm just going to sit here and let you dictate my life? You lost that right when you left, Ethan." His eyes flashed, but his voice stayed steady. "I lost a lot when I left, but I didn't lose the right to keep you alive." The intensity of his words left no room for argument, and yet my stubbornness flared. "You don't get to decide for me." His shoulders tensed, his hands gripping the edge of the counter. "Fine, then decide right now. Do you want to walk out that door and pretend last night never happened? Or do you want to stay alive long enough to finish grad school?" The air was thick with challenge, with the weight of choices neither of us wanted to make. I hated that he was right. I hated even more that part of me wanted to trust him, to let him carry the danger the way he once carried my dreams. Finally, I muttered, "What do they want from you?" His expression closed off. "You don't want to know." "Yes, I do." His gaze locked on mine, sharp and unyielding. "They want me dead, and they'll go through you to get it done." The words dropped between us like a blade. The next days blurred into a tense routine. I stayed inside his apartment, curtains drawn, the city reduced to muted sounds beyond the walls. Ethan came and went at odd hours, always checking the locks twice, always carrying the weight of something unsaid in his eyes. Sometimes, I caught him watching me when he thought I wasn't looking soft, longing, as though he still couldn't quite believe I was real. And sometimes, late at night, I caught myself wanting to close the distance, to fall back into the arms that had once been my safest place. But there was always the shadow of danger pressing between us. One evening, I finally asked the question that had been gnawing at me since this started. "Why did you really leave?" He froze, his back to me as he poured himself a glass of water. "I told you," he said quietly. "It wasn't safe." "No," I stood, moving closer, my voice shaking. "You didn't tell me anything. You just disappeared. Do you know what that did to me? Do you know how many nights I waited for a call that never came?" His shoulders tensed, his knuckles white around the glass. "I thought it would be easier if you hated me." I swallowed hard, tears pricking my eyes. "Easier for who?" Finally, he turned, and the pain in his expression nearly undid me. "For both of us. If I stayed, you would have been pulled into this world sooner. And I couldn't live with myself if that happened." "But it happened anyway," I whispered. His silence was answer enough. The knock came the next night. Sharp, insistent. Ethan's hand was on my arm instantly, dragging me behind him as he moved to the door, gun already in his grip. I hadn't even known he kept one here. My heart slammed against my ribs, every nerve on fire. "Stay back," he ordered, his voice low, deadly. The knock came again, followed by a voice. "We know he's in there, Ethan. You can't hide him forever." My blood ran cold. They weren't talking about him. They were talking about me. Ethan's jaw clenched, his body taut like a wire pulled too tight. For a moment, I saw the man he had become, the one forged in shadows, hardened by battles I'd never known. And for the first time, I realized he wasn't just fighting for me. He was fighting because of me. The voice outside the door sent a chill straight through me. It was smooth, almost casual, but there was steel beneath it. The kind of voice that had rehearsed threats so many times they became second nature. Ethan motioned for me to back up, his eyes burning with a silent order. I obeyed, retreating into the corner of the living room, my pulse hammering so hard I swore they could hear it through the door. "Walk away," Ethan called out, his voice steady but edged with warning. "You don't want to do this." A laugh floated back, muffled by the thin walls. "You always were good at pretending you had the upper hand. Open the door or we make you." I pressed a hand to my mouth, stifling a cry. Whoever was out there wasn't bluffing. Ethan's jaw tightened. He glanced at me once, a flicker of something soft breaking through his hardened mask. Then, in one fluid motion, he shoved the couch against the door, wedging it like a barricade. "Pack a bag," he ordered. "What?" My voice cracked. "Now, Noah." I didn't move. "Ethan, what are you going to do?" He turned, and for a split second, I saw the boy I had loved, the one who had kissed me under summer rain, who had whispered forever in the dark. But layered over that boy was the man the world had tried to break, the man who knew what kind of monsters knocked on doors in the middle of the night. "I'm going to buy us time," he said. The pounding on the door began then. Each hit louder, stronger, splintering the frame. My body jolted with every slam. I stumbled toward the bedroom, grabbing the first backpack I could find. My hands shook as I stuffed clothes inside, my thoughts a tangle of fear and disbelief. This wasn't my life. I wasn't supposed to be the kind of person who hid from criminals in some half-empty apartment, with an ex-boyfriend holding a gun on the other side of the door. But then again, I wasn't supposed to still love him either. By the time I returned, Ethan was braced against the door, his weapon raised, his breathing even. I couldn't tell if he was terrified or if this was just another night for him. "Window," he said, nodding toward the fire escape. My stomach dropped. "You're not coming?" "Of course I am. But you go first." The wood cracked under another blow. I flinched, clutching the backpack tighter. Ethan crossed the room in 3 strides, gripping my chin gently but firmly, forcing me to look at him. His eyes bored into mine, steady and unshakable. "You trust me?" he asked. I wanted to say no. I wanted to tell him that trust was something he had burned when he left me 2 years ago. But standing there, with the world collapsing outside and danger clawing its way in, I realized I did. Against every reason, against every scar, I trusted him. "Yes," I whispered. "Then go." The metal rungs of the fire escape were slick with dew, the night air biting at my skin. I climbed down quickly, heart racing, every creak of the old structure sounding like a gunshot. Behind me, I heard Ethan following, his movements sure, controlled. When our feet hit the alley below, he grabbed my hand without hesitation, pulling me into a run. The backpack bounced against my shoulders as we darted through the maze of backstreets, our breaths clouding in the cold. Somewhere above us, the apartment door gave way. Shouts filled the night. "They'll follow," I gasped. "Not if we're fast enough." But Ethan wasn't just running blindly. Every turn he took was deliberate, weaving us deeper into the city's underbelly until even I lost track of where we were. Finally, he yanked me into a shadowed doorway, pressing me against the wall, his hand covering my mouth. I froze, his body shielding mine, his chest rising and falling against me. His breath was hot against my ear. "Quiet," he whispered. Footsteps thundered past the alley, voices sharp and angry. We stayed still, so close I could feel the hammer of his heart against my back. When the noise faded, he lowered his hand slowly, his touch lingering for a fraction of a second longer than necessary. My lips tingled where his fingers had been, and despite the danger, despite everything, heat flared in my chest. We shouldn't be here. We shouldn't be this close. But God, I wanted to stay pressed against him forever. We didn't stop until we reached the edge of the river. The water gleamed silver under the moon, the city lights painting the surface in broken reflections. Ethan finally slowed, his grip on my hand loosening but not letting go. I bent over, gasping for air. "Where the hell are we going?" "Somewhere safe." I laughed bitterly. "You keep saying that, but you haven't told me where safe even is. Do you even know?" He turned, his expression dark but steady. "There's a contact of mine, someone who owes me. They can hide us until I figure out our next move." I stared at him, anger and fear warring inside me. "You keep saying me, like this is all on you. But it's not just your life on the line, Ethan. It's mine too. Don't I deserve to know what's happening?" His jaw worked, his silence heavy. Then, finally, he said, "They want the files I took." My stomach lurched. "Files?" "Evidence," he clarified. "Records. Names. enough to put half their operation behind bars for life. I thought I'd buried it deep enough they'd never find a trace. But someone talked, and now they know I have it. I blinked at him, stunned. You what? You stole from them? You've been sitting on evidence this whole time. His eyes softened, just for a second. I thought if I could hold it long enough, I'd find a way to make it count, to end it for good. But I never wanted you involved. I shook my head, my voice trembling. But you left me because of this. You chose this fight over us. He stepped closer, his hand hovering like he wanted to touch me but didn't dare. I left because I thought it was the only way to keep you alive. If they knew how much you meant to me, they still figured it out. I cut in, my voice cracking. And now I'm in the crosshairs anyway. His expression was wrecked, guilt carved deep. I know, and I'll spend every second left fixing that. Even if it kills me. The river lapped against the shore, the sound swallowing the silence between us. My chest ached, torn between fury and longing, fear and love. And somewhere in the chaos of it all, I realized I wasn't just afraid of dying. I was afraid of losing him again. We found the safe house hours later, crumbling brick building tucked between warehouses, its windows dark. Ethan led me inside, his movements cautious, scanning every corner. The place smelled of dust and old wood, but it was quiet, hidden. He dropped my backpack by the couch and turned to me. Get some rest. I'll keep watch. I should have argued. I should have demanded answers, screamed at him for dragging me into this nightmare. But exhaustion weighed me down, and the truth was, I didn't want to fight anymore. Not tonight. As I lay on the worn couch, I watched him settle near the window, gun within reach, his body tense even in stillness. And despite everything, the fear, the danger, the broken history between USI felt safer than I had in weeks. Because no matter how twisted this world had become, no matter how many enemies lurked in the shadows, Ethan was here. And deep down, I knew he always would be. The safe house didn't stay safe for long. We lasted 4 days. For days of restless sleep, of whispered arguments in the dark, of Ethan watching me like he might blink and lose me forever. I wanted to believe we were hidden, invisible. But the tension in Ethan's shoulders told me the truth long before the sound of tires screeching outside did. The night they came, everything happened fast. Shouts, footsteps, the crash of a door being forced open. Ethan was already moving, shoving the files he'd been guarding into a duffel bag, his voice sharp. Noah, stay behind me. Do not move unless I tell you. My body shook, adrenaline flooding my veins. Ethan, he grabbed my face in both hands, kissing me so suddenly, so fiercely, it stole the air from my lungs. It wasn't gentle. It was desperate. A promise and an apology in one breath. If anything happens, he whispered against my lips, know that I never stopped. Before I could respond, the door blew open. Gunfire split the silence. Ethan shoved me to the ground, returning fire with lethal precision. The world became chaos, splintering wood. Shouts, flashes of light. I curled against the floor, ears ringing, every heartbeat screaming, don't let him die, don't let him die. Through the haze, I saw Himi X, my love, my curse, standing his ground like a man with nothing left to lose. Every movement was practiced, efficient, brutal. He wasn't fighting for himself. He was fighting for me. But there were too many of them. Go, he shouted. Now, Noah. I scrambled toward the back door, but I couldn't leave him. Not again. Not like this. No, I screamed, grabbing the nearest object, a heavy lamp, and hurling it at one of the intruders. Crashed against his shoulder, buying Ethan a second. Just a second. But enough. He shot the man cleanly, then pulled me to my feet, dragging me outside into the night. The city blurred around us as we ran. Sirens wailed in the distance, or maybe in my head. All I knew was the burn of my lungs, the grip of Ethan's hand around mine, the pounding certainty that if I let go, I'd never see him again. We ducked into another alley, hearts thundering. Ethan pressed me against the wall, his breath ragged, his shirt stained red at the shoulder. You're hurt, I gasped. Not important. It is, he kissed me again, silencing me, his lips trembling with exhaustion and need. When he pulled back, his eyes were glassy but fierce. I need you to listen, he said. The philotheory enough to end this, to bring them all down, but only if you get them into the right hands. Promise me. My throat closed. Don't you dare talk like you're not going to make it. His smile was pained, broken. Promise me, Noah. I shook my head, tears burning. I promise if you promise to stay with me. His hand cupped my cheek, tender even as blood stained his fingers. I'll try. The next hours blurred into survival. We made it to a contact Ethan had whispered about, a federal agent who had once been his friend. The files changed hands. Names, dates, transactions, evidence powerful enough to spark arrests within days. But victory didn't come without cost. Ethan collapsed not long after, the wound in his shoulder worse than he admitted. I stayed by his hospital bed, gripping his hand like it was the only thing tethering me to the world. When he finally opened his eyes, I couldn't stop the sob that broke from my chest. You idiot, I whispered. You scared the hell out of me. He smiled weakly. Guess I'm still good at that. I leaned down, pressing my forehead to his. Don't leave me again. Not like this. Not ever. His voice was rough, but steady. I left once to protect you. I won't make that mistake again. Weeks passed. The underworld that had haunted us crumbled under the weight of the files. Their leaders exposed. Their empire dismantled. The danger didn't vanish overnight, but the shadows felt thinner, less suffocating. Ethan and I spent those weeks relearning each other. Not as boys in love, blind and reckless, but as men scarred by loss, holding tighter because we knew how fragile everything was. There were nights we fought, old wounds reopening, words sharp and raw. But there were also nights we lay tangled together, whispering truths we'd never dared before. Nights where the silence between us felt like peace, not absence. And slowly, painfully, beautiful I began again. One evening, months after the world had stopped burning, we stood on a rooftop overlooking the city. The air was crisp, the lights below flickering like stars. Ethan slipped his arm around my shoulders, pulling me against his side. Do you regret it? I asked softly. Coming back. He kissed the top of my head, his lips lingering. Not for a second. I'd follow you 1,000 more times if it meant keeping you safe. I looked up at him, at the man who had broken me once and stitched me back together without even meaning to. You don't have to follow anymore, I said. Just walk with me. His smile was small but real. Always. The city kept moving. The world kept turning. The shadows would always be out there, waiting. But so would we. Two men who had been broken by love, reshaped by danger, and found each other again in the ruins. Not perfect, not easy, but alive, together. And for the first time in years, that was enough. Thank you for listening. If you find it interesting, please like and subscribe to follow the next stories.